Hello everybody, thanks for joining today for episode 29 of Customers Who Click. I had an amazing conversation with Rishi Raway this week, all about copywriting and how this can impact on your conversion rates and customer experience. Rishi's a super smart guy, and it was a really fun and interesting conversation. I think copywriting's really underrated these days, as discussed with Pete back in an earlier episode, especially when it comes to e-commerce. The feeling is that customers don't really want to read long pages of text before purchasing, but it's kind of missing the point. Some will, some won't. Most will read at least some of the copy, and if that's well written, if it's a well-written benefit or headline, it keeps them either reading the page longer or it convinces them to just take action and get on with their purchase. But let's hear from Rishi now on his approach to conversion and copywriting. Hi Rishi, thanks for joining me. Absolute pleasure having you here. Can you tell us a bit about yourself, what you do, how you've got here?
Sure. I am endlessly fascinated by irrational behavior of shoppers, human beings, and myself included. So that's really kind of the invisible force that propels me forward. I want to understand why we behave in such radically, fantastically, beautifully irrational ways. And that's kind of my guiding force. And the way I got here was, 11 years ago, I was working in analytics, and I would have insights based on friction that I was finding on clients' websites. And they would say, this is great, but how do we know that your ideas are working? And I got into A/B testing. And then from there, I got into buyer psychology. So that's my story arc.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, some of the irrational stuff, I think you can kind of explain it to yourself afterwards and go, okay, this does actually make sense. But other times it's just, like initially when it happens, you're just thinking, why are people like ignoring this and doing this? Or sometimes it's why aren't they buying, and you just can't work it out. And yeah, that's kind of part of why I got into CRO and customer experience as well. Trying to solve these problems rather than just trying to drive traffic to a website. Cool. So, like, what does a standard day look like for you?
I'm pretty kind of structured in some ways and unstructured in other ways. So I start my day at 5 a.m. I like to actually start reading. I like to start my day by reading articles that I've written a long time ago. So I've been writing now for the last 13 years, and I've been writing specifically about buyer psychology, and in particular, focused on buyer psychology as it relates to first-time buyers. So that's kind of the universe in which I swim. And so I've been writing for the last 13 years. So I like to kind of start my day by actually picking a random article that I wrote a long time ago, and then just start reading that. It's typically a quick article, but what it does is it really helps me focus in on first principles. I think with marketing being such a broad universe, I find myself every day getting tugged away and pulled and distracted with different areas that are not necessarily things that would make me happy, but I get distracted all day long. So just starting the day by reading some of the articles that I've written, which essentially reminds me of why I do what I do, is like how I like to start my day. And I guess after that, I have to do client work, and then I do a lot of internal work as well. But whatever free time I have between in my day, I actually like to spend time looking at what other online marketers are doing or other marketers are doing. And it doesn't just relate to online marketers, but it could be, I spent a lot of time watching infomercials. It could be reading, magazine ads and things like that. So the reason I'm really fascinated by all of these things is that the people that I'm trying to influence and convert are also living in the world and experiencing these things. So I want to kind of walk in their shoes, so to speak.
Yeah, I like that. I don't like the fact you do it at 5 a.m. I'm definitely not a morning person, but yeah, it's really important to spend time just reviewing. Like, I like the fact you review the stuff you've written before. I think that's really interesting. But yeah, looking at what other marketers are doing and actually really paying attention to what's out there, particularly, it's a bit different for you and me now, given that I work with different clients. But when I was working in-house, I found it really useful looking at what other marketers in other industries were doing as well, not just what our competitors were doing.
Right.
Because I think you get some really good creative ideas from anywhere that you can just adapt and see how it fits to your industry.
That's true.
Let's talk a bit about copywriting then, because that's what you do, isn't it? Like your main copywriting for conversion, really. So yeah, tell us a bit about that. I guess it'd be good to hear why you focus on the copywriting aspect. But yeah, kind of tell us about why it's important, why businesses need to be paying a bit more attention to copywriting.
Yeah, it's a great question. So, I kind of look at myself as being not a great copywriter. And the way I got to copywriting is very interesting, and it's very different than how copywriters get to copywriting. So most copywriters get into copywriting because they essentially love to write. They're creative people, and they say, hey, copywriting is something that, they kind of stumble into copywriting. In my case, my background is in engineering. I didn't even know what copywriting was. I was never really interested in that. But what happened was that as we started A/B testing, we realized that the tests that we were doing that had the best sustained impact. Now, keep in mind, I'm emphasizing on this word sustained impact, were ideas that were around copy. And so we kind of started, being a lazy guy, I wanted to kind of zero in on things that were driving the best results. And so we kind of kept on doubling down into copy. And eventually we kind of stopped doing everything else and just completely focused on copywriting. And I would say, just for the sake of your audience, even within copywriting, there is a specific aspect of copywriting that I find the most compelling. And when I say I find it compelling, I mean it converts the best for the tests that we run, which is stories. So within the universe of copywriting, the thing that I find the most fascinating and the thing that converts the best for the clients that we work with is storytelling. And so that kind of sits at the center of it. And the reason why it's so important is, first of all, is because it's being underutilized. So if you are a marketer, there is a significant opportunity to outdo your competitors using copywriting. With design, the thing about removing friction using design is that you're essentially saying, okay, well, my checkout flow is kind of cumbersome. I'm asking too many questions. I'm going to kind of remove the friction doing that. That is very different than the kind of impact you get with copywriting. So with design changes or with UI and UX changes, you are eliminating friction. So you're removing drag. With copy, you're essentially amplifying desire. So you're actually increasing the likelihood of someone buying by getting them to be super excited about the product you're selling. So to me, the net impact of copywriting is significantly higher. But the other advantage of reason why I think it's such an important part of CRO is that consumer preferences are changing all the time. So you might remove friction from your checkout flow, but your competitors could do the exact same thing, and therefore you become kind of equal. But it's very hard for competitors to copy your story. They can kind of copy the outer layer of your story, but they can't really copy the soul of your story. So I feel it's actually more of a sticky advantage. And that's why I feel that copywriting is, from my perspective, obviously, it's a pretty important part of CRO.
Yeah, I like that. And it kind of feeds into the conversations around branding that I've had recently and on the podcast, how those brands that really clearly show off their values and have a purpose kind of stand out more than those ones who are just almost like any other fashion site or any other e-commerce site. And it's, apart from maybe some different colors and a slightly different layout, there's not really much to differentiate themselves. But it's those ones who do talk about those real values that they care about that stands out and makes people more interested in them. And yeah, like you say, that has to be done through copy. You can't do that through design, really.
Yeah, and and also, even if you want to, if there are certain brands that kind of lean more on video content, there's that's also an interesting secular trend, is that video consumption is going up, exponentially. And I think a lot of people confuse this and they say, oh, copywriting is the words that are on the screen. If I'm creating a video, that's really not copywriting. That's video work. And I don't draw a distinction because videos are based on scripts and scripts are based on copy. So even if you were to create video content, it still kind of emanates from principles of copywriting.
Yeah, it's about the words you're using, not
right, not the
in whatever form that takes.
That's true.
If you remove the words, if there aren't words involved, then it's kind of not copywriting. It's I guess more design oriented, exactly right. which yeah, then you get those problems coming up. I think another kind of link to that actually is we're seeing more and more brands have a clearer figurehead, I suppose. As someone who tends to be like the CEO and the founder. You've got obviously Zuckerberg and Bezos. I can't actually remember the guy's name, but the guy from Uber, the guy, WeWork, those names, people knew their names as the person leading the company. And I think that contributes to it as well, probably a bit from that video side. If you had a video of the founder talking about something he's really passionate about for the business, their values and whatever, that's going to take it, to that next level again.
I totally agree.
Yeah. What are some of the common myths and misconceptions about copywriting?
The first thing I would say, having spoken to a lot of CRO professionals and frankly, having spoken to a lot of clients as well, they seem kind of surprised that why would someone focus so much on copywriting? And there's this general belief that copywriting doesn't really move the needle. I think part of it is based on statistics. So the basic advantage of making UI changes is they apply to the entire user experience. And so, for example, changing the UI of a product page, it applies to every product page. And so the logic is that, hey, we can get to statistical significance faster. And if we had a best-selling product page that was driving 30% of sales, that's still 30% of my audience. That's not 100%. So the theory is that how would copy really even make a difference? So I kind of disagree with this whole kind of construction of the argument. I think that if you write incredibly good copy, the contrast you can create is going to be so huge that you will be able to actually statistically validate it. So the thing about testing is that the smaller the lift, the harder it is to identify it. Therefore, you need a bigger sample size. But if I were to reduce the traffic to 30%, which is what the bestseller would probably get, but I were to create a concept where the copy is 4x better, then that would be more than enough to get a statistical winner in a reasonable amount of time. So that's what other CROs, why they don't focus on copywriting. But there is this other kind of misunderstanding about copywriting is that, I would say I should just keep my focus on that. So I would say that's one of the myths is that copywriting doesn't really make a difference. And then even if it does make a difference, we can't really use it as a test because we have sample size issues. And I disagree with both of those arguments.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. If you're going to put the effort into write really good copy for a product, you have to do it differently for every product because you can't write really good quality copy for an entire website in one go. Yeah, each product has its own unique features and benefits. No matter what the site is, there's always going to be those differences that really need to be pointed out in that copy. So yeah, it does take loads of time, and then it's not really one A/B test, is it? You've got a different test operating on each page.
Yeah, and I would say start off with this is the other mistake is that I think you bring up a really good point, which is that people get overwhelmed and they say, I have copy everywhere. I mean, every our emails are copy, my website is copy, everything is copy, my ads are copy. This seems like a monumental task. And my take on that is that focus in on the things that get the most visibility or are the most critical steps of your conversion funnel and start there. So don't worry about every product page. That's ludicrous. But if you say we have this one product that's driving 30% of sales, and we start working on that, then that's a great place to start. So change the scope of what you're trying to do to match what it is that you're trying to do, and you'll be fine.
I absolutely agree. I guess one of the issues there is people like speed, don't they? They want the biggest results in the shortest amount of time. And what you've described might bring those results, but the way, you're kind of saying we're going to A/B test this one particular product page for the copy. And then as soon as you say that, you kind of lose their interest because they're thinking, well, That's one page. Why don't we run a test that can be run across the entire site? And I think it's kind of linked to this idea that's been discussed a bit, that the art of marketing is kind of dying, and that people are more focused about the quick wins and the big wins.
Yes, that's true.
And that creativity is being lost, which is the other point I was going to make about the copywriting, actually. I think for me, one of the reasons people probably feel that copywriting doesn't work that well and it doesn't really move the needle is because they will, they will write some copy, write a product description, and then they might write a different product description in a different way, but it doesn't really move the needle for them. And it's because they haven't actually written great copy. They've written the same quality copy, just in a different way.
Yeah.
Like you've mentioned, these stories, getting that story in there. And you see great descriptions of products very rarely. It's because there is that kind of story behind it, and it really explains the emotions and the benefits, and how the benefits build those emotions for people. And that has to be done really by someone who understands how to write copy. And I think that's probably
that's really true. That's really true. I mean, it's I can't emphasize this point enough. I mean, it's a really beautiful topic, and I mean, I'm so excited just thinking about it. But you've hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it before. I've worked with copywriters who are basically, I mean, no offense to them, but you could replace them with AI these days already, because all they do is churn out kind of the same sort of stuff, and make sure there are words on the page when there are words required. The good copywriters that I know are all kind of freelance or have their own agencies and things, and they charge a lot of money because they do write fantastic copy, and it shows, because it does move the needle. It does generate those results.
And if you can, and the beauty of this is that, and this is something, again, I've spoken to a lot of copywriters. I have relationships with many, many copywriters, and a lot of copywriters are focused on just the craft of writing copy. And I think they're incredible copywriters, but they have this, because they look at it as an art form. See, what's really interesting about you and I and people in the CRO world is that, for all our flaws, we actually rely on scientific evidence. And I think that's a really powerful thing. And so when I talk to copywriters, and I kind of talk to them about, hey, have you considered like A/B testing? I would say there's obviously a growing group of copywriters that actually are comfortable with this now, because that's what their business is based on. But the vast majority of copywriters, even today, kind of look down upon the idea of A/B testing and conversion optimization, because they're so used to this idea that, their copy should be evaluated by other copywriters, and in terms of like how well it is structured and how dulcet it is and all of that good stuff. The point I'm trying to make is that if CROs and copywriters can actually can essentially fuse together, I think that's $1 billion opportunity. And so I think that this is, what copywriters are going to find is that the reason why they feel their copy is so good is actually because it converts better. If they just have the courage to actually A/B test it, they'll see incredible results and possibly even can charge even more. And so that's the part that's the opportunity that I see. I see very few brands focusing on copy. I see a lot of copywriters actually kind of get ignored because they're uncomfortable with the idea of A/B testing their creative work. And I think if we can combine these two things, brands will benefit and copywriters will benefit as well.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I kind of see kind of a similar problem with design as well, actually. And I don't want to, I'm definitely not going to slag off designers here, but what I've seen is a lot of designers are really good designers, but they're good at making things look good. And as a marketer, and particularly one who's focused on conversion, I always look at things and think, are people going to click on this? Or does this image really tell me what the product is, what the benefit is, and that sort of thing? And I remember one of the companies I worked at a few years ago, one of the other marketers, because we were complaining about design resource at the time and how the designers we had didn't really have the time to produce ads for us. So we were out there looking for freelancers and things. And this guy just said, look, we just really need a conversion monster, like someone who can design, but has a really good understanding of how to actually get people to interact and click with it. And it's kind of that same thing with copywriting. The really good ones do understand it and do know how to get people to respond to the copy. But the ones that more commonly get used in companies, as far as I'm concerned, who aren't specialist copywriters, they lack that bit of, I guess, like specialty expertise that really gets people to emotionally respond to the copy rather than just the copy being well written. If that makes sense.
This is exactly right. The analogy is exactly correct about designers and copywriters. One thing I should also mention real quick, which I think is a very valid point, is, and I didn't mention it earlier, but I should mention it now, is that, we talk about CRO, we say, why isn't copywriting used much? And we talked about the significance issue. There is another reason why I don't think copy is used as much, or I think copy should be used, is that because my background is in A/B testing everything apart from copy. And one of the challenges we would run into all the time is that when we would test UI changes, first of all, it's expensive to engineer a UI change, number one. Number two, clients are more emotionally tied to their design choices on their website versus the copy on their product pages. So I find it easier to write radically different copy on a product page and get the client's approval versus showing them a UI change that they weren't expecting. I find they give more resistance on that part. So that's another problem with UI changes. But the third problem is it can potentially have rendering issues. So we might run a test where we might actually realize that for people that are on certain versions of Chrome, that floating element we added and the light box actually doesn't render properly, and we simply missed out on that, and we therefore didn't know how the test didn't do well. The great thing about copy is that it requires very little engineering effect, and I can use a A/B testing tool like VWO and just change the copy, and I can do it on my own without requiring development resources. So that's one other thing to keep in mind about why copy changes are something we should be using more often from our toolbox.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Like you say, some changes can be quite quick and easy, but unless something's really wrong, you can make big impacts with these quick and easy changes. But a lot of the time, the A/B tests and the changes that really move the needle are the ones that do require a bit of dev work to finally get them implemented. And that, slows things down. It can be expensive if they need, external dev support on that. So yeah, like you're completely right. Literally just changing the words on a page is super easy. It's coming up with the correct words to use. That's the more challenging part. Just, I guess, on that, do you find there are objections to using long form copy on pages where it hasn't existed previously?
Tremendous objections with long form copy. It's a format that works quite remarkably well. If you go to modern websites, go to Under Armour, go to Nike, go to Amazon even, you'll find that copy is shrinking in size. So the general perception that clients have is that we need to write fewer, use fewer words, come up with more punchy copy, but let's avoid long form sales letter format copy. So in my personal experience, I would say on balance, I would say length of the copy doesn't really matter much. What matters is what you're saying, and if the reader thinks what you're saying is interesting and believable. So if that is one page, then that's fine. If you can tell your whole story in one page, that's fine. If you need 12 pages to do it and you're telling it in an incredibly interesting way, then people will watch it, people will read it. I come from India, and in India we have Bollywood movies that run for like 3.5 hours, and people, millions of people watch it. And so If the content is interesting and resonates with the reader, then that's all that really matters. In my own personal experience, what I will say is that I find long form copy converts a heck of a lot better. And I can give you a simple reason for this. It's the exact opposite of what exact opposite of what we expect. So the reason why marketers like to use fewer words is because we've surveyed our customers and we've asked them if they like long form copy, and they have told us overwhelmingly that they want us to just get to the point and talk in as few words as possible. This is the exact opposite of how humans actually behave. It turns out that what we say are our preferences often don't line up with what our preferences actually are. And the reason why long form copy works so well is because as a consumer, I actually don't want to call your customer service number, email you, or chat with you and ask you questions about things, because I know that once I do that, I'm in your system and you're going to then bombard the heck out of me. The great thing about long form copy, especially if it's written well, and especially if it's structured well, this is why I believe that the design of copy is very, very important. And a lot of copywriters don't think about design, but I think a lot about the design of copy. But if you design your copy appropriately, where the user, there are two types of readers. There are skimmers and there are methodical readers. And we need to write copy in a way that satisfies both of those groups. And we've invented a whole bunch of techniques to satisfy that. And you can find that on my blog. But for the purpose of this discussion, what I'd like to say is that the long form copy is very effective because it answers all the questions that I may potentially have as a consumer. And the conclusion that we've drawn as marketers is wrong. The conclusion we've drawn is that the copy needs to be short because most people like short copy. I think the conclusion that we should draw is that the copy needs to adapt to the reader. So if someone came to that page and I was able to read their mind and I would figure out that they prefer 300 words, I would love to retransform my sales pitch into 300 words and give it to them. If I figured out that they prefer 720 words, I would love to retransform my sales pitch into 720 words and give it to them. I want my sales pitch to be what my buyer wants to read.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was in Dan Kennedy's book, The Ultimate Sales Letter. He mentions exactly what you said about there are people who skim and there are people who read, and you want to. So not only do you want to structure your page and your copy so that the skimmers can basically skim the page and see those highlighted headers or bullet points or whatever, and get what they need, and the other people can read every word if they want. But also the thing about long copy is if someone reads the first couple of hundred words and gets convinced to purchase, that's great. They're done, they're converted. But there will be people who will want to read, like keep reading, and there'll always be that one little bit more information that they want to read or want to find out. And if that's on that page, it does no damage to the people who don't need to read the whole page. But again, it comes down to that structure, and are you getting like key messages across? Like, can they, the people who do want to just quickly have a look and go, yeah, okay, cool, that is what I wanted, I'll purchase. Does the page make it easy for them to do that? Because if you then force them to read the whole page, they might drop off, and you'll suffer conversion. So it's kind of about enabling some people to skim, some people to read the whole thing, having like call to actions throughout and things like that, so that if people, as soon as someone's made up their mind, they can just get on with it. If they haven't, they can keep reading.
I mean, Will, you're talking about something that, I haven't been this excited. And this is why this stuff excites me so much, is that I'm so excited right now because you are talking about the exact same things that I have devoted my entire professional career into. And just yesterday, we were having an internal discussion, and we have a copywriting framework, a very specific way in which we write copy. And my employee was saying, we're going to very soon run out of things to talk about because we've already covered, we've already got the structure. These are like, 12, 15 different things that we talk about. And I said, no, everything can be broken into a universe in itself. So even within long form copy, I can write like 20 different chapters about different aspects of long form copy. You talked about skimmers versus methodical readers, but there's so many other scenarios to play out that we can think about. It is a universe in itself. And I think this is why I want more CRO people to get into copywriting, because we have such a surface level understanding about what copy is. We think about copy as being, catchy phrases that kind of get people to read something, or maybe like a listicle or things like that. It's so much more than that. And using technology, and this is the beauty about technology, is that we can actually use technology to essentially make the copy a choose your own adventure type experience. I mean, that's like the ultimate fantasy for marketers, is that if they can personalize at scale their sales pitch to their audience, which we can figure out today with technology, then we should be doing that. That's what we need to triple down into. And that's what really excites me about the potential of copy.
That makes me think, actually. I had a chat with Mikhail Da Costa, founder of Lido, a little while ago on the podcast. And while his tool is more, so they're chatbots for kind of lead generation and conversion, but you could actually do exactly what you're talking about, couldn't you? You could have an on-page chatbot, which is basically this like choose your own adventure bot, which uses like fantastically written copy to either potentially just explain why this one product is the right thing for this person, or direct them to the correct product for them, but using copywriting to do it. So you could actually almost, this is something I'd actually want to test, actually. I think it'd be really cool to almost like have an e-commerce store. You'd have to have obviously some sort of theme to it, and it could be, I don't know, for some reason vaping came to mind just now, but you almost have like no way for people to get into the store. There's no like catalog, there's no category pages or anything like that. There is just this bot that has such well-written copy and questions that anyone comes to this website can very quickly click through the options and be kind of shown the product that they need to buy, and hopefully they buy it. But I just think that would be quite an extreme thing to do, obviously, but I think that'd be really cool. I can see how that could work for so many businesses. Anything from like you mentioned, Nike is more short form now, but if they went a bit more long form with this kind of choose your own adventure thing, they could say, well, these are the correct trainers for you based on the fact that you have this sort of foot shape and you want to use it for track running. So these are the trainers you should buy. And that's basically going to make you go, cool, well, I trust Nike because they're a massive brand. Based on my requirements, they've told me the product that I need to buy. And as a final check, like, yes, it's the right color for me. Yes, it's got great reviews. Cool, buy it.
That's exactly right. That's the direction in which we're moving forward. We'll be seeing more and more of this kind of stuff moving forward.
Yeah, I need to find someone to test that with now. If someone was maybe either getting started with copywriting or wanted to like really, really work on their copywriting, maybe just revamp their website or something, where should they start? What are some of the tips that you'd suggest?
I've read many, many books on copywriting, and there is just one book that I've now read 4 times. I actually read it every single day. I read like a page or 2 every single day. So it's almost like a constant meditation. And then by the time I've finished the whole book, I'm actually ready to start all over again, because each page is like giving me just a little, reminding me about first principles and giving me nuggets. And that book is Adweek Copywriting Handbook by Joseph Sugarman. And so it's Adweek Copywriting Handbook. The name of the author is Joseph, Joseph Sugarman, one word, Sugarman. And I would say, even if you are a seasoned copywriter or someone who's getting started with copywriting, don't make the mistakes that I made and kind of walk in the wilderness for 4 years. I would say buy this book, read this book, and it is going to transform your life, and it's going to radically improve the kind of copy that you're writing.
That is like the best 5-star review of a book I've ever heard, I think. Actually, that book has been on my bookshelf for years and I've never read it. and now I feel really bad. So that is definitely, in fact, straight after this recording, I'm going to take it off the bookshelf and put it somewhere where I'll actually see it and pick it up and read it. Because I think, like you say, don't just give it a go and pick it up. Try and pick it up as you go. Read some of the best advice out there and use that to help you.
And my general advice about books is that we tend to look for books. We tend to look at the published date and we say, okay, if this book was written a year ago, it's the culmination of everything we've learned as human beings up until a year ago. So this is what I want to read. I actually look at it exactly in the opposite way. This book, Adweek Copywriting Handbook, is a very old book. I don't know when it came out even, but probably came out before the 80s, maybe early 90s, probably before that. The fact that in a world where we are looking for new information all the time, that this book is still getting published is actually the single most important sign that the book is saying something that is evergreen. And so that's a good signal that you should, the fact that the book is old is actually a great sign.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many good books and good copywriters who have books and copy and content out there. And it's all kind of 30, 40, 50 years old. But it really, really works. It's still relevant. Because this isn't something it's really not something that actually changes. Like, people still react to copy in the same way as long as the copy is well written. So if you can work out how to write the copy and how to dig into those emotions, that still works. It's a bit different to, if someone wrote a book on how to do Facebook ads or PPC, maybe that book after, I don't know, definitely after 5 years is probably going to be, 50% out of date. Yeah. And the rest is that kind of consumer behavior, make sure you're actually writing ads that appeal to people. But copywriting, that's, it's something that's always going to last. And same with psychology books as well. There are some really good books out there. I remember reading Persuasion. Oh yeah. Really good book. That's not that old. That's probably was definitely within the last 10 years. It's probably less than that, but that's a really good book. But yeah, I think outside of kind of copywriting books and textbooks and all that, consumer behavior stuff, or not even consumer, but behavioral psychology and that sort of stuff might not seem too relevant when you're reading it, because it doesn't explain how to write copy, but it tells you how to how to understand how people think and how they behave. And then if you've got the kind of principles of copywriting understood as well, you can link the two together and write fantastic copy.
I would like to underscore something you said. So, given a choice between being a crappy copywriter with very little skills, but a pretty good understanding of buyer psychology or shopper behavior, versus someone who is a pretty damn good copywriter, but doesn't really understand buyer psychology or isn't enamored by that subject, I would always choose option number one. Copywriting is just a medium. Obviously there's a tremendous art form to it, but at the heart of this is storytelling. And at the heart of storytelling is understanding how humans behave. So it really at the heart of everything is understanding why humans do what humans do. And that is the most important question of all. So what you're talking about is actually, far more important than simply copywriting. You're talking about the soul of, why marketing even exists or why anything exists.
Yeah. This is probably stripping down to the basics, but I suppose a great copywriter who doesn't understand consumer behavior is probably more likely to talk about the features. And someone who's maybe not such a great copywriter, but really understands consumers and why they buy and how they behave, is probably more likely to write about the benefits, because that's what people want.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Cool. So what are some big and common mistakes you see with copywriting?
Yeah, I mean, this perfectly segues with what we just discussed. We talked about features and benefits, and I think you're exactly right. I think average marketers focus on features, and fairly good marketers focus on features and benefits. But I would argue that actually features and benefits, even features and benefits, miss the key point. So my thesis is that, and this is why I think focusing purely on features and benefits is a big copywriting mistake. And the point I'm trying to make here is that buyers buy for deeply emotional reasons that they themselves can't articulate. There's extensive research done by Dr. Eric von Hippel from MIT 30 years ago, and the research was around this whole idea of unarticulated needs. The analogy he would use is that, if someone is at a car dealership and trying to buy a car, and they're looking for a red car, and the dealer shows them, 3 or 4 red cars, they're looking for a very specific shade of red. How do you describe that? And the truth is, you just can't describe it, but you can, when you see it. And so there's a whole bunch of needs that consumers have that are either subconscious, that they don't even know they have these needs, or it's something that they can't even articulate. So even if we were to actually ask them, they won't be able to describe it. And getting to those needs and understanding those needs is where the real magic of copywriting happens. So I would say that if you're a copywriter that doesn't focus on features and benefits, by all means, start focusing on benefits, because benefits are incredibly important. But if you've already started using benefits on your pages and you've kind of reached the local maxima of what you can extract in terms of conversion rates, I would say now let's shift the focus to really understanding the fundamental emotional needs of your buyers. And there's a whole framework for this called jobs to be done. I would just recommend any listener to Google jobs to be done, and you will find a whole bunch of resources. And it's a very powerful concept, and it's going to really kind of take your copywriting to the next level.
Yeah, like you say, if you're not really talking about benefits, which unfortunately a lot of companies don't, that's absolutely a good place to start. But yeah, it is that emotional stuff that you can't explain, like why people, the car example is a great one. I've seen a color on a particular car that I've really liked, but I don't like that car. But when I'm looking for the car, kind of browsing the options for the car that I do like, and it doesn't have that blue, then I will switch color completely.
Yep. And
I'll go to red or white or black, just because I don't like that the option of blue that they have.
Yeah, and the sales guy will be so frustrated because he'll be like, why don't you like it? And you'll be completely kind of stuck. You won't know how to describe it. And that's what an unarticulated need really is.
It's just not the right blue. That's it. And I guess even stuff like, I guess one of the big debates is like always Pepsi and Coke. And, why do some people prefer Pepsi? Some people prefer Coke. And the answer is always like the taste. Like Pepsi doesn't taste right. I prefer Coke over Pepsi, but I couldn't really tell you what the difference is. I mean, I in a blind taste test, I reckon I could, but I can't describe what that difference is. I can't describe why I like the flavor of Coca-Cola more than I like the flavor than Pepsi.
You're exactly right.
I know how we kind of talked earlier about how, the advice from 30, 40, 50 years ago is still really valid and fantastic. But do you see any big trends coming up with how companies will use copywriting, or how copywriting can influence sales and conversions?
I actually have one tool that I'd like to talk about. I haven't used it myself yet. I plan to at some point. So a fellow copywriter, a fellow marketer, Pep, who is running an agency called CXL. They do lots of training for conversion optimization. He has also been a huge proponent of the power of copywriting. And one of the problems with copywriting is that it's hard to sometimes collect feedback on copy. Like, where is the copy going wrong? You can kind of show a poll, but that's not very granular, because the poll appears and we ask questions like, did you like this product? And the response is no. That's not very actionable for me as a marketer. So PEP has now come up with a new service called copy testing, and the website is copytesting.com. And what they do essentially is you give them a URL of your page, and they actually have people on their panel who are from your core demographic or the demographic that you're trying to market to, and they actually read your copy and they give very specific feedback on a line by line basis on the page itself. So you can kind of see little annotations, and they'll say things like, this headline is confusing, or I don't understand what you mean by this phrase, or whatever it is. But it's really powerful stuff. So while A/B testing is great, and of course, I think we need quantitative data, but we also need qualitative data. And when it comes to copy, the best way I know to collect qualitative data would be through a tool like copy testing.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, more and more use of tools and services to kind of audit your copy and work out how you should improve it. Because I've known of copy testing for a little while. Like you, I've never used it. So you've got sites like usertesting.com, which is where they find people in your target audience, and they just kind of let them loose on your site with specific tasks that they need to complete, and you get that feedback on the usability of your website, because it's things like, can you go and find this product in this size, or go and make a booking under these conditions with these requirements. But yeah, it's all about the usability, the UX of the site, really. So yeah, having a similar service where people will just, I guess, like tear your content, tear your copy to pieces, is really useful, because I think that's one of the things people are worried about with doing this sort of thing is, I think people take it personally, don't they? The feedback, and it's not supposed to be like, I know I just said they tear it to pieces, but you see other websites, and I do it myself. I do teardowns where I will, look at a landing page or a product page or whatever, do a video of it, and I would just say, I think this could be like this, or this could be wrong. There could be something that's actually wrong, and it's called a teardown. But the feedback's just supposed to be, useful, actionable feedback, and that's what I imagine copy testing does. But people get a bit precious and protective about it, and almost don't want to admit they're wrong, do they? Don't want to be told by someone else. Especially, it's exactly what we said earlier. Copywriters want to be judged by copywriters. So I think you will get people who they put their copy in and then be told, you get this feedback and then say, oh yeah, but they're not a copywriter. They don't know what they're talking about. They've misunderstood a particular, what's the word for something in copywriting? The particular system or whatever that they've used to create this sentence. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if the customer doesn't understand it.
Yeah.
Cool. I just want to add one thing from me on the trends, actually. I do think AI is going to be really, really big and useful in copywriting, not for long form and that storytelling stuff, or at least not yet. But it's super, super helpful with the really short form stuff like ad copy, subject lines, and little bits like that. There's a company called Phrasey. I've worked with them. I actually got Parry on the I think it was the second episode. It's just really good, and it's a really good tool for freeing up resource, because email marketers, it was first designed around subject lines. So email marketers would spend a fair amount of time trying to come up with even just 5 different subject lines that are good, each good on their own and different enough to be worthwhile testing all 5. Whereas this tool just spits out like 20 for you in a couple of minutes. And it also takes away the bias, and it takes away that ability for you to say, and I know I've been guilty of it in the past, where I've said, I've written this subject line, I think it's the better one because of this, and it's just my opinion, and I kind of almost force it in there, because you do get that in companies where almost like the person who speaks loudest gets what they want. So again, like AI takes away that bias and that ability to manipulate might not be the right word, but you know what I mean. So yeah, I think one of the big trends for me would be AI in copywriting for the shorter stuff.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point, actually. And even as copywriters, keep in mind we are still using a toolbox. We have a bag of tricks that we're using. So it's not like and if you are a copywriter that's literally starting from scratch with new assignments, then you are doing it wrong. So we obviously have a bag of tricks that we use over and over again. We should, because that's the tools that make it to our toolkit are the tools that have actually driven results for clients. So we should use a toolkit. And what AI does is it just applies that toolkit at scale. So it takes like the toolkit of like 100 great copywriters and then situationally applies it at lightning speed. This is a net good for us, because this means that we can now focus on other things that are related to influencing buyer psychology, not and other aspects of copywriting. So I think you're right. It's an important trend, and I think we should embrace this trend, because it's it actually frees us up to invent a whole new way or a series of ways of doing copywriting.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you have any pet peeves when it comes to marketing?
There's one that I kind of think about a lot. In 2020, there was a broad study done by a European company they looked at like millions of dollars worth of e-commerce transactions over thousands of websites, e-commerce websites. And what they found was that the average session duration for an e-commerce website in the year 2020 is 2 minutes and 32 seconds. To put this in perspective, not only is 2 minutes and 32 seconds a chronically short amount of time to convince and convert a buyer, but it's actually less time than we had in 2019. In fact, so it's gone down by 29 seconds from the 2019 study. So it's probably going to continue going down into the future. So this is a real problem. We have this real challenge of overabundance of choice, fragmentation of attention. And marketers are in that situation where we're like, well, we need to get the user's attention and kind of keep their attention. And the reason why I categorize this as a pet peeve is that the way marketers go about doing this is actually completely wrong. So when a marketer is when it's revealed to them that they have 2 minutes and 32 seconds in order to essentially do something interesting with this visitor on their website, they start panicking. And in a moment of panic, they decide to throw everything at the problem. So they want, there are 4 notification bubbles, there are 17 floating tabs, there are 6 pop-ups, everything is screaming for my attention. And the hope is that, hey, listen, if I kind of put everything out there, put it on blast, then maybe something will resonate and the user will will convert. I think that's a ludicrous thing to do. And I think it has the exact opposite effect, which is it basically makes everything about you even more annoying, and it causes incredible, uncalculated long-term harm to your brand. So that's my pet peeve, is that marketers seem to be using this incredible insight, which is that people spend 2 minutes and 32 seconds on a website, and drawing the exact wrong conclusion from that and throwing everything at the wall. And it's quite annoying, and I'm sure we all experience it. And I just see this increasing in velocity. Yeah.
So what's happening is websites are becoming less compelling, and so people are spending less time on them.
Yeah.
Because, as we've been talking about, the copy is not great, or the images might not be great. And it might be things like the UX isn't great, or there is no brand and it's just a generic site. So there's, again, nothing compelling for them. And instead of trying to make their sites compelling and interesting and capture someone's focus, they kind of throw, everything on there, little pop-ups, little banners, sales and everything, to say, well, one of these things must catch their attention, surely. And like what you said, actually all it does is confuse people more it means in the 8-9 seconds you have to initially capture their attention, you're spreading that time over 4 or 5, flashing banners or pop-ups and things. And so actually you're only really getting 2 seconds.
That's right. And I think it kind of comes down to how you frame the question. So if you frame the question as, I have 2 minutes and 32 seconds to do something, that's going to take you down a dark path. But there's another way of framing the question, which is, I have 2 minutes and 32 seconds. I know that's all I get off the gate. What could I do from a storytelling perspective to get the user to care more and want to spend more time on my website? That's the right question to ask as a marketer.
Well, so, immediately what I'd be thinking is I'd look at the average time for people who don't purchase on my site versus the average time for people who do purchase. And then saying, well, let's say it's 2 minutes, 32 seconds for those who don't. I'd be saying, well, I've got 2 minutes, 32 seconds on average to convince this person to spend another 6, 7, 8, 9 minutes, whatever it is for the average person who does purchase. How do I do that? And then exploring, this is me going off on my CRO side, but exploring like what is the consumer behavior of those people who do purchase? How does it differ from those who don't? And you need, it's a whole nother topic of conversation, but you need other tools and you need feedback and things. But I imagine it, some of it will be around things like, and there would be people who say, I just didn't find the website interesting. Like they might buy the exact same product somewhere else because they just went, it's just, there's nothing that excites me about this product on this website. And then they see the same product on another website, which has that great copy. And they go, oh yeah, I can see myself wearing these. But yeah, anyway, just finally then, what do you think is the most underrated aspect of marketing at the moment?
I think the thing that we talked about earlier, which I asked listeners to Google, which is jobs to be done. I'd like to repeat that point because I think it's a very important idea. It's a radically different way of looking at marketing. It's a concept that's existed in the world of product design for the last 30 years. I think it's something that applies really well to marketing. And obviously, increasingly, more and more marketers are using it. But it was, co-invented by a radical thinker, Bob Mester, many years ago. And I would recommend, just search for jobs to be done. And I'll give a little teaser. There is a video by HubSpot. It's an interview with Clayton Christensen, who's a prolific writer and wrote about innovation. So if you look for Clayton Christensen, look at it up on YouTube and you look for jobs to be done, you'll find a 7-minute video. And in that 7-minute video, he actually talks about a very fascinating topic, which is the McDonald's milkshake story. And that's the teaser I'm going to give you. And if you can search for that, the milkshake story video, and find that video and watch 7 minutes of that video, after you've read the book, the copywriting book I recommended, then this video in combination with that book will change your life twice over. So that's the most underrated aspect of marketing that I think more marketers need to know about, which is jobs to be done.
Yeah, so I can just add, if you Google milkshake story video, it's the first result.
Okay. So
it is right there, and it's the HubSpot video. I can see that in the thumbnail. So yeah, I've Googled that as another tab for me to look at later. Cool. This has been really fantastic. I'm sure we could have gone for a lot longer. It's such an interesting topic, especially when you start diving into the actual emotions and consumer behavior stuff. If people want to get in touch or find out more from you, what's the best way of doing that?
So I have a weekly buyer psychology newsletter where I just put together ideas that I'm thinking about, things that I've found in the wild, quick reads. And that they can find by joining my newsletter. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn as well, but I think the newsletter is a good way to get started if you're not super active on LinkedIn. And that can be found. There's only one way to actually get to it, which is www.frictionless-commerce.com/join. So frictionless-commerce.com/join. If you go there, there's a simple sign up form, and you can, of course, unsubscribe whenever you want. But every week, every Monday morning, I'll share with you something that is only talking about buyer psychology, conversion optimization. But I shared every Monday morning, and I think you'll find it incredibly valuable because it's basically my entire life's work.
That's great. I'll make sure there's a link on the Customers Who Click website to that. Great. Well, yeah, this has been absolutely fantastic, Rishi. It's been an absolute pleasure.
I very much appreciate the opportunity. This has been a great conversation. Thank you, Will, for having me. And if your audience has any questions at all, they can reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to answer and address any questions because this is something I care about deeply.
I agree with everything Rishi said, really. Copywriting is so incredibly important. And even just having a basic understanding of how to craft copy can set you miles ahead of the competition. A lot of people think of copywriting as just making sure there's a description on the page, but it's so much more than that. It's about crafting that story about your products or services and kind of working on those customer emotions. Would you rather buy a t-shirt that simply states the material it's made of, the color and the fit style? Or would you be more attracted to the beautifully handmade t-shirt made of locally sourced breathable cotton to keep you feeling fresh all day long? Or something like that. You could probably tell I'm not a copywriter. Which is why you should get in touch with Rishi. Find him on LinkedIn or check out frictionlesscommerce.com. He's got quite a cool a newsletter that he sends out. And for any podcast questions or requests, it's will@customerswhoclick.com. Next up, I've got David Who's on, and we're going to talk about SMS marketing and how you can drive better retention and loyalty without annoying people. But until then, keep those customers clicking.